Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. Judging by this graphic, it looks like it was another bad day for the Russians in Avdiivka. 810 eliminated personnel, 12 tanks, 16 armored vehicles, and 24 artillery pieces. We'll talk about Avdiivka in a second, but the top story today: Vladimir Putin suffers cardiac arrest, sparking alarm in Kremlin inner circle. Guards at Vladimir Putin's residence reportedly entered the Russian leader's apartment after hearing a loud crash before discovering the 71-year-old lying on the floor next to the bed. The problem with this story is it only has one source, a Telegram channel named General SWR, likely run by a former Kremlin insider. But honestly, the Kremlin is so bad about keeping information secrets that if this were true, lots of people would know about it, and it would have already been leaked to Western intelligence or even Ukrainian intelligence. So if this was a report coming from Ukrainian intelligence or a leak in the Washington Post, I'd be more inclined to believe it was true, but if it's a single source and it's just a Telegram channel, I can't believe this is true. But the Kremlin did take the time to deny it. Kremlin states Putin is alive and well, and definitely not using body doubles. Nobody mentioned body doubles, Russia. That's kind of weird you would bring that up. But the Kremlin's press secretary Peskov answered a question from a reporter stating that no, President Putin is fine. This story is another canard. Not true. So now that the Kremlin is denying it, I'm actually confused. Maybe there is some credibility to the story, but no, I don't think we can take this serious at this time. That's not stopping parody accounts like Darth Putin from having some fun. This is what Darth Putin has to say. It's hard to have a heart attack if you don't have a heart. He kept going. If I can't have a heart attack because I don't have a heart, I'm also safe from having a stroke. Okay. One more. I can't organize a decent attack for my army, so what makes you think I can manage an effective heart attack? It's pretty good. So let's get to Avdiivka. New Avdiivka video shows Russian armored attack shot to pieces under fierce Ukrainian artillery fire. The Kremlin has been attacking Avdiivka with massed infantry following big tank and infantry fighting vehicle losses in a long and so far unsuccessful attempt to take this town. So when we go to the military map, these attacks started almost 2 weeks ago on October 10th. And every day is Groundhog's Day. Russia keeps doing the exact same thing, sending wave after wave of armored vehicles through open fields in broad daylight to be annihilated. And Russia did make progress yesterday. If we zoom into the northern section, there's this rail line that goes north-south, and there's this waste hill of debris from a coal mine. The Ukrainians have been using this as the high ground to repel all these attacks. But Russia did skip forward about 2 fields going towards this rail line. This is a war of attrition. And if you were to ask the Ukrainians, would you be willing to give up these 2 random farm fields in exchange for eliminating thousands of Russian soldiers and hundreds of armored vehicles? The Ukrainians would take that trade every single day. At the moment, Avdiivka is still secure, it's still holding. How long can Russia keep up these same intensity of attacks? And we're going to find out together. Let's see if this is still happening 2 weeks from now. Analysis. Can the Russian army really be that stupid? Yes, they can be that stupid. So the question is why? Why the city of Avdiivka, and why now? And the theory being floated is that Putin wants to announce his re-election campaign. He of course, is running. Of course, he's going to win. But he hasn't officially declared to the Russian people on television or at a rally that he's running for re-election. So Putin wants something in his speech militarily to brag about, such as capturing the city of Avdiivka, when the Russians have failed to do so for the last 9 years. So is this the justification? Is this the urgency from the Russian military to do something positive on the battlefield? And yeah, this sounds likely. This sounds like what the Russians are actually thinking and why they're being so aggressive in the short term. According to UK's Ministry of Defense, Russian troops likely suffered up to 190,000 permanent casualties in Ukraine. So recent Russian assaults in Avdiivka have contributed to a 90% increase in Russian casualties. And according to UK's defense intelligence, it is likely that Russia has suffered between 150,000 and 190,000 permanent casualties, killed and permanently wounded, since the conflict began. When you factor in temporarily wounded, the number goes to 240 to 290,000. The problem with all these numbers and all these estimates is what is included in this number. Is this just regular uniformed Russian military, excluding the Wagner PMC, excluding the Ukrainian citizens from the DPR and LPR militias? So I have questions about this number, but 190,000 is still insanely high, and this is the deadliest war for Russia since World War II, no matter how you count the bodies. So there's videos. I've been sharing them with you the last couple weeks, and here's another video of a Russian armored vehicle running over their own soldiers accidentally. This is the third or fourth video I've seen of them doing this in these failed assaults in Avdiivka. As always, all the links are down below in the description if you want to see it for yourself. And here's a Twitter post thread from ChrisO talking about the stories of recent survivors from these meat assaults in Avdiivka. According to one Russian soldier, their commander told them that they're just a piece of meat and that he wished them to die quickly. If you're a Russian general or a Russian colonel witnessing all this in real time, you have to not care about your own soldiers. To see this wave after wave being annihilated, knowing that there's slim to any chance of there being a success, how do you internalize this as a Russian commander, talking to soldiers you know you're about to send to their death that morning? It's pretty cynical. So let's check in within average Russian military units. Here is a video of 24 Russian soldiers from the 12th Guards Regiment. Surprise, surprise, filming a video for the dear leader, Vladimir Putin. What do they have to say? Dear Commander-in-Chief Vladimir Putin, we're servicemen of the 31985 military unit, 12th Tank Regiment, Storm Z, primarily mobilized and volunteers who came from Moscow region, and other regions. We're appealing for you to look into the actions of our command. Upon arriving to the DPR, we were attached to the 200th Motor Rifle Brigade to carry out assault tasks. Our unit took losses in personnel and vehicles, were sent to missions without reliable intelligence, without artillery support, without proper comms. Despite this, personnel conducted all set objectives, while taking losses among personnel. All the reasonable suggestions made by us, the command of the 200th Brigade and the 31985 military unit ignored them. Deputy Commander of the 4th Tank Division is setting impossible objectives for us. Vladimir Putin, we're asking you to look into this situation, blah, blah, blah. All these guys have their faces covered. None of them are showing their name tags, so they can't be identified. These men are just all going to die soon. The Russians shot down another one of their own helicopters. What's Russian air defenses doing? And they've been pretty good the last couple months about eliminating their own pilots and planes. So the 3 pilots on the helicopter were identified, and what's going to come of this? Probably nothing. Usually when this happens, the crew is given the Order of Courage, and the air defense crews are also awarded the Order of Courage for shooting something down. So the Russian military needs more bodies for the meat grinder. Police raid Moscow Mosque for war recruits. Russian police rounded up Muslim worshippers exiting a Moscow mosque after Friday prayers. I've seen the videos online. They're pretty much just grabbing anyone. A wave of police raids targeting Central Asian migrant workers has swept Russia this year, as authorities seek to bolster the Russian military's manpower in Ukraine. So most of these Muslim men are not Russian citizens. They're migrant workers from the former Soviet republics lured to Moscow in the promise of jobs and a decent salary. And then if they break any law, or even if they do nothing wrong, the Moscow police will arrest them and then tell them they have to join the Russian military. For the Russians, this is 2 birds with 1 stone, getting rid of undesirable ethnic minorities in Moscow and sending them to Ukraine to fight and die on the front lines. Putin will do anything to protect his power base, the ethnic Russians of Moscow and St. Petersburg, trying to spare them as much as possible from conscription and mobilization to keep the peace in the capital city and prevent people from protesting and rioting. According to iStories, Russian PMC starts recruiting women as snipers and drone operators. So yes, the Russian military is viewing these ladies as desirable in more than one way. And Ukraine has tens of thousands of women in their armed forces, but it's a war of defense, not a war of aggression. And something tells me that these Russian women are not going to be treated fairly, especially when a lot of these units have prisoners recruited who serve time in prison for doing terrible things to women. Getting these people mixed together in the war zone doesn't seem like it's going to end well for these women. So Russia needs allies. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov to visit Iran. It's the Grand Coalition, World War III to defeat the evil Nazi West. Let's see, Russia's got Syria, they've got Iran, they've got possibly the Taliban. Who else? And Republican Minority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell went on Face the Nation to make his arguments why Congress should support Ukraine. That all of America's enemies are kind of coalescing together to threaten democracy, threaten NATO, threaten the West, and the United States needs to respond. So here's a quote he gave. "We're rebuilding our industrial base. The Ukrainians are destroying the army of one of our biggest rivals. I have a hard time finding anything wrong with that." And Senator McConnell said something I didn't like, stating the U.S. faces a new axis of evil, including Iran, China, and Russia. This is a throwback to a famous line from George Bush's 2002 State of the Union address when he declared Iraq, North Korea, and Iran the axis of evil. we don't need to call things axis of evil, and why the heck are we tossing China in there when China is not directly militarily supporting Russia? Iran should definitely be there. Iran's been in the axis of evil for over 2 decades now. Good job, Iran. But you know who might really be offended is Kim Jong-un? I mean, North Korea was in the axis of evil back in 2002, and they've stayed pretty evil, so Kim Jong-un, his feelings must be hurt. He must be very confused why China got promoted and he got kicked out of the axis, but these kind of titles and names are all pretty stupid. Let's just treat each country like it's acting. Ukraine's CIA-trained intelligence operatives assassinated dozens of Russians and collaborators, according to the Washington Post. Yeah, of course, there's a war going on. I don't really view this as any kind of like a shocking headline, but people on the internet are acting surprised that there are spies on both sides of the border conducting clandestine operations, including, yes, assassinations. So this is spy versus spy. It's probably more intense today than it was at any point during the Cold War. Russians are trying to assassinate Ukrainians, and Ukrainians are trying to assassinate Russians. That's what happens in war. So Ukraine's intelligence responded to this Washington Post story by stating they will comment about their operations after the war is over, after Russia has been defeated. And the Russians also responded, stating that they're the victim and this is all terrible and the evil CIA is the one who killed Daria Dugina when nobody cares about Daria Dugina. I don't know. Orban compares Hungary's EU membership to Soviet occupation. This guy is a real piece of work. So the Soviet occupation of Hungary, after World War II until the Berlin Wall came down, let's go ahead and look at how many Hungarian citizens suffered under Soviet occupation. So the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, people wanting real democracy, real freedom. The Russians, the Soviets, killed thousands and forced 250,000 Hungarians to flee their own country. So according to Viktor Orban, voluntary membership in the European Union is worse than Soviet occupation. What this guy wants is all the benefits, all the subsidies and payments from wealthier countries, like Germany and France, without all those pesky, cumbersome things like an independent judiciary, free and fair elections, free speech, a free media. Dictators don't really like that kind of stuff. But there's this thing called Brexit. And if you want to leave the European Union, you can do so, Viktor Orban. You appear to control the entire country and you can do whatever you want. So if it's terrible, just leave. Anyone can leave the European Union whenever they want. You're not being occupied. Good news for Ukraine. Erdogan submits bill on Sweden's NATO membership to his parliament. So Erdogan wanted concessions from Sweden. I think the reason was because Sweden was providing training and equipment to Kurdish groups in Syria, and the Turks don't like the Kurds. So perhaps Sweden had to give up their support for Kurdish militias, but Erdogan appears to be fine with Sweden joining NATO. So Finland officially joined a couple months ago. Sweden will be ratified real soon, and congrats! The Baltic Sea is officially now a NATO lake. Russia has made NATO bigger and stronger than it was ever going to be. If Russia hadn't invaded Ukraine, Finland and Sweden never would have joined NATO. But that's the only way to stop Russian aggression. Russia has never attacked a NATO country. Therefore, every country in the world now, or all the countries bordering Russia, are going to want NATO membership to protect themselves from Russia. Final couple feel-good clips. The first one is a pocket defender for this Ukrainian defender.
Красавчик. Наївся, напився. І ліг спати, так, Соня? Соня наша. Красавчик.
Is that the standard issue size, or can I get one slightly bigger? The final clip are some Ukrainian defenders on the march, walking somewhere, and they can't find Pasha. Where the heck is Pasha?
Паша, блядь! Паша! Скоро екзамен, уже всім похую. А чого про Юру ніхто не вспоминає? Юра!
If anyone has seen Pasha, these guys are currently looking for him. Let them know on social media. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.